Hey guys, Nick here. Just a few housekeeping things before we dive into this video. I know I've been slacking on making videos lately. I just wanted to apologize. I'd like to say that it's because I've been busy, but I think it's more because I've been slacking because summer's almost here. But I promise I'll try to be more consistent again. So anyways, one more housekeeping thing before we get into this video. So I'm going to be putting together, or I am putting together, and I'm working on putting together a crash course for anybody that wants to transition from from Excel directly into Knime. A crash course where we do similar to my current videos, where we take random data sets and we just run different manipulations on them. But this is going to be one cohesive data set that we're going to walk through from the very inception, so reading in the raw data to manipulating it and cutting it different ways for analysis, and then exporting it to various outputs. So I'm going to have that course hopefully wrapped up within the next month and a half. So if you guys are interested, just let me know in the comments. I'll drop the link to that in my videos as soon as it's available. I'd appreciate the support. But if not, like always, I'm going to try to keep up with my YouTube videos too, just because I think it's good to pay it back. But anyways, so today's video, cutting to it now, this one came from Gordon Food. He asked me a question, which I've highlighted here in blue. My interpretation is he's trying to timestamp his data outputs. All right, so he said let's say for this month, he wanted, and see, this is from a month ago, so you guys know I've been slacking. But he said for this month, I want the constant value column to read this format. So 01/04/2022 looks like April 1st to me, right? Then when I ran it again, it looks like May 1st. So I gave him my first thoughts off the cuff of how I would run this. Basically create a date, convert it into a variable, and have that variable value set as your constant value. So we're going to walk through that right now. So we're going to say I've got this example data set, which was from one of my way early videos, but kind of irrelevant. We're just going to say to this data set, we want to add a constant value column, which will be the timestamp for a particular date. Right. So what I was saying is create a date like I did in this manual table, right? Got this date input, and then convert that to a variable. So after you've got your date input, wherever that's feeding from, be it a manual table, I'll show you a better way in a second method. But after you've got that date set up, all you got to do is do table row to variable, drag and drop, and connect that. So what we're doing is we're going to convert this date into a variable, right? So just execute. You don't need to do anything fancy. So now you can see this ID is that date value. It's now a variable. So what we're going to do now is I have that same variable already input into this constant value column, right? What I'm going to do instead of manually inputting this is I'm going to take this variable and set it up here, connect the variable, double click. Now I'm going to go to the flow variable tab. Then under the column value, I want this column value to be variable based off of whatever that original ID flow variable is set to, right? So after that, you should see now the column value parameter is controlled by a variable. So you see now I can't type in that date anymore. It's grayed out and it's got this little dark or bolded V next to it. This means it's controlled by a flow variable. The flow variable being that value we set up here, right? So all we got to do is hit apply, hit OK, and now I'll execute. And now if I look at the output table, zoom in a little bit, and I'll wrap the column headers. So that value is now set here, so you can see April 1st, 2022. And just to show you how the variable works, you've got to have something controlling this variable. Obviously you don't want it to be you manually inputting it. Like, let's update this to May 1st, 2022. I'll hold control, hit OK, hit OK. So what that does is it applies the settings and it executes the node. It executes the node right away. So we'll right click. Now our table says this ID is set to May 1st, 2022. Convert it to a variable. The variable ID says May 1st, 2022. And now if we execute our constant value, we don't have to do any adjustments to it. Now you've got May 1st, 2022. Oh, should be good enough, right? But you can see now we don't need to manually input the constant value in here. The constant value is flowing through a variable. This variable right now is still rather manual, right? Because you've got to come in here and change your date, and that's what we're trying to get away from. So what you could do, and what I was saying in the comment to Gordon, was to do a create date and time range node, drop it here, and then we're going to say today. Change this to font 13 so it's a bit readable. We're going to double click, and we're just going to say a fixed number of rows. We want one row, not 11,000. We're going to name that to date stamp. So, and we're going to make this a date. So we're saying we're going to create a date in a new column called date stamp, and we only want one row. We're going to use a starting point is the execution date and time. So whenever we execute, aka today is June 6th. Our endpoint, we're going to run with the execution. Our interval, we actually don't need the endpoint since we're going to run with the interval. We only want 1D for 1 day. So we're saying intervals of 1 day, give me a fixed number of rows starting from the execution date. That one row should be today. So if we hit apply, see if I hold control, that OK says OK execute. So I click it and it executes. Now I can look at the output, right? So you see that created today 6/6/2022. So what I could do is plug this to the table row as a variable, table row to variable, hit OK, execute this, and now my variable is the date stamp. I'll go back here because I changed the variable name. I just have to make sure the column value is pointed to the right variable, which is date stamp. Hit OK, we'll control OK, and now if I look at this output table, now we've got 6/6/2022. See that? It's pretty easy once you like understand how you put the building blocks together to get it to work, right? And then if you're going to be running this every day, though, you don't want to reset this manually, right? Reset. You want to be able to reset from one starting point. So if our data is just refreshed here, then we can force this to reset, as you saw in my previous video, by just connecting this flow variable. So now whenever this is reset, it forces this to reset. So if we were to run this tomorrow, this would reset and it would be executing with the execution date time at a 1 day interval, aka it would just be tomorrow's date, right? And then you could run it all the way through, and you've got your timestamp. So another way, and actually just to give you guys some more, just to show you the flexibility that Knime offers us, right? And this is how I would go about it now. Before, I would be okay with this, but let me show you a different way you could run this. A quasi constant value column. So we'll replace all of this with one node, right? And this is why I love this node. I'm sure you guys know because you've seen my other videos. But search column expression in your node repository, and we're going to connect it to our data set. So we'll go from the data to this column expression, and we're going to name this date stamp as well. Date stamp v2. because the version 2 is a bit more refined. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to double click into this column expressions, and you guys will see why I love this. I love this node. This is the best node in my opinion for a data analyst, a business analyst, other than the SQL stuff, right? What we're going to do is we're going to say call this date stamp, and then we'll leave it as a string. You can actually we'll do the date. Let's go all out, right? So now what we're going to do is we're saying we're creating a new column that's a local date type that's going to be named date stamp. Now in this expression editor, we set up what exactly you want to fall into that column using the expressions available here. All we're going to do is we're going to go to date and time, and in the latest update of Knime, I think they were watching my a lot of what I spend doing in here, or not a lot, but something I do here a lot is I used to use JavaScript to create the date field here, but Knime added this date function in the column expression. All you have to do is plug that date function into your expression editor, and if you hit evaluate, that gives you today's date. All right, so now you've got, with this simple value, you've got today's date today. So if you hit apply, hit OK, and now you execute that, look at that date stamp. Literally one node and one function. Look at how beautiful that is. That's why I love the column expressions, and that's why I think it's valuable that you guys run with this second setup. If you already know how to use variables, I don't think you really need to use them in this instance, but if you need to practice, now you know how. But for me, this is how I would run the column expressions. Now, what if you don't want to run today? What if you want to run yesterday, right? Well, then what I would do is I would say today, and then I would do a period, and then I would say minus days, and then a 1 in parentheses. So I'm saying today minus 1 day, evaluate, look at that, 6/5, which was yesterday. And then all I have to do is hit apply. Remember, hold control, click on OK, and now you can execute all at once. Now look at your data output. Now you've got your date stamp for yesterday. Likewise, you can do minus days. Let's do minus 2 days, and then we'll say tomorrow date stamp. And the same way we set it up to a local date, we'll set this one to a local date, and we can do today. Just copy this expression, paste it here, and now if we want to add days, instead of saying today period minus days, we'll say today period plus days. We're going to add 2 days, so instead of being the 6th, we should see the 8th in the, actually let's not call this tomorrow, let's call this tomorrow plus 1 date stamp. So in tomorrow plus 1 date stamp, we'll see tomorrow plus 1, we'll see the 8th. So if we hit evaluate, look at how simple that is. So now we'll hit hold control, hit OK, hit OK. That executes. Let's look at our output. Look at that, that's beautiful. We've got our date stamp, which is minus 2 days, and our tomorrow plus 1, which is today plus 2 days. So that's how I would go about date stamping your data in the Knime Analytics platform. You've got 2 different ways. You can use a date and time range creator with a variable and a constant value column, or you can simplify down to column expressions using the today function, and additionally the minus days and plus days functions with that as well. So guys, remember, if you have any questions, just drop a comment. I know I've been slacking lately, but I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And I appreciate the comments because they help me come up with content for you guys as well. And like I said, I have a crash course coming up, so if you guys are interested in that, drop a comment and I'll drop the link in the future videos as soon as I have the crash course complete. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys on the next video.